Master O'Donnell, thank you for your time. German media and political leaders are increasingly concerned about the direction of U.S. democracy and foreign policy following President Trump's return to office. These concerns are shaping public perception and creating real challenges for U.S.-Germany cooperation. Recent polling highlights the scale of the issue. Around 30% of Germans now view the United States as a threat to Europe, and a large majority hold an unfavorable view of President Trump. My role as press attaché in the Red Team embassy is to address these concerns directly, to stabilize public trust, and to reinforce the strength of our partnership through clear, credible, and consistent communication. German outlets such as Der Spiegel and ARD are raising consistent concerns over whether U.S. democracy is at risk after January 6th, over immigration enforcement and human rights, perceived unilateral actions, including the Greenland proposal, and U.S. involvement in Gaza and the war in Iran. At its core, the question surrounding all four of these issues is whether the United States is still a stable and reliable democratic partner. What I recommend to address this issue is a calm messaging approach that acknowledges concerns without becoming defensive. In reference to January 6th, you can state that it raised serious concerns, including for many Americans, and that what followed was a legal and institutional response that is still ongoing. That debate continues, and that process ultimately reflects how democracies function. On immigration, you can say that immigration is one of the most debated issues in the United States, that there are strong disagreements about how to balance security and humanitarian concerns, and that while the debate continues, the U.S., like any sovereign nation, is still enforcing its laws. On Greenland, state that some proposals have generated debate, but our long-term approach remains grounded in cooperation and mutual respect with allies. On Gaza and Iran, state that they are complex conflicts where even allies may disagree. But U.S. policy is shaped by security concerns, alliance commitments, and ongoing diplomatic efforts. This approach will reflect U.S. priorities, security, sovereignty, and stability, while reflecting a key principle that our goal is not to eliminate disagreement, but to ensure that the disagreements we have do not undermine the cooperation between the United States and Germany in fulfilling our foreign policy goals. To address public perceptions and the increasing distrust, I propose a coordinated media strategy. For print media, increased engagement with Die Zeit and Der Spiegel, given through in-depth interviews and editorial discussions. For television, appearances on ARD and ZDF with clear, consistent messaging, and with digital media, an expansion of embassy social media and engagement with German digital commentators and influencers. These will be supported by weekly press briefings, monthly high-profile interviews, and a rapid response media team to address misinformation in real time. In addition, I propose inviting German media influencers to embassy events in order to increase transparency and expand reach among younger audiences. I also recommend engagement with the German Federal Foreign Office and the various Bundestag members, with major political parties, including the CDU, SPD, Greens, and FDP, and with think tanks specializing in transatlantic relations and issues, such as the German Marshall Fund and the American German Institute. We should also engage critics constructively, including those skeptical of U.S. policy, in order to maintain credibility and open dialogue. One of the best ways to do this is by bringing respected U.S. figures to Germany. At the top of the list is former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice. We can bring her in to discuss democracy and global leadership. And as someone who's involved in the reunification of Germany, she understands some of the issues that the Germans may be worried about and is well equipped to discuss these issues in real time with them. Other notable speakers that can be brought in later down the line who disagree with some U.S. foreign policy right now include Robert Gates to discuss NATO and security, and Samantha Power to discuss human rights and democracy. As a former Secretary of War and Director of the CIA, Robert Gates understands the importance of working with allies to go toward a common goal. And Samantha Power, as former head of USAID, has a deep respect for human rights. The speakers would participate in public forums and university events alongside expanded exchange programs between sister cities, which have been effective in the past, all under the goal to strengthen people-to-people trust at a grassroots level that can help rebuild some of the lost trust that the Germans have toward the US. Implementation itself is going to be coordinated across the embassy team. American officers will be leading messaging, press coordination, and digital outreach, while locally employed German staff will monitor public opinion and maintain media relationships. The timeline for this looks as follows. For the first 3 months, we will be expanding media management and launch the influencer outreach program. For 6 months after that, we'll be implementing the exchange programs and public panels, bringing in those speakers. And then in the final 9 to 12 months of that year timeline, we'll be assessing the shifts in public perception to see how effective these programs have been in rebuilding German trust. Resources to help along this path include public diplomacy funding for events and exchanges, support from the State Department Bureau of Public Affairs, and coordination with Congress and allied embassies in Berlin, particularly the UK and France, to reinforce shared messaging. Germany also faces internal pressures from groups such as the AfD and activist movements. I recommend framing this as a shared democratic challenge, even stating that both of our countries face pressures from political extremes. But what matters is that our institutions are designed to manage those challenges within the rule of law. Additionally, recent statements by JD Vance and Marco Rubio have sparked controversy in Europe and should be addressed. Regarding JD Vance, state that the United States still strongly supports a free and independent press as a core democratic principle, and for Marco Rubio, that the United States remains committed to strong alliances and global stability. In short, Ambassador, and to close, I recommend emphasizing that we understand why these issues raise concerns in Germany, and that there's even active debate in the United States on many of these topics. But what matters in a democracy is how they manage disagreement, and that a US-Germany partnership remains essential even when we disagree over issues. With a clear, credible, and consistent communication strategy, we can rebuild trust, strengthen cooperation, and advance US interests in Germany.